death, devastation. Go ahead and add your own D word.
Add your own D word. It's all relevant, exactly. So this group has been formed by everybody that's sitting here at the table, everybody that has been a victim or has lost a loved one at the hands of a repeat offender. And the purpose of these meetings is twofold. It's for us to come together to act as a support group for each other. And secondly, to get educated on how we can work together to create some positive change in our community and push for tougher penalties to take some action on repeat offenders. And so, so tonight, as we have gathered in the last 4 or 5, 6 weeks, our format is very simple. We provide opportunity for all the families to share your story, and then we get an opportunity to hear from our elected officials on what their position is on the recent happenings and any proposed policy or legislation changes coming up for the session now, and then look at some of the other things that we can start working on together as a group here in our county or our city. It's not just Bernalillo County and Albuquerque. This is a statewide effort. So, so again, welcome. We'll go ahead and we'll start on this side. There is a sign-in sheet that is going around. We just ask that you sign in legibly with a phone number and an email address, so that we can continue to communicate with you guys on our meetings and anything else that we feel is important for you guys to know. So we'll start here.
Well, my name is Rachel Hernandez. I'm the wife of Luis, and I'm here to support a concerned citizen and to be here in any way that we can to make changes in our city.
And thank you for being here.
Of course.
My name is Ivan Ulibarri, and I'm a member of R.O.b.D, and I'm here to support all of you and also to be a voice in making change happen in our state. It's out of control, and we should not tolerate this pathetic distinction of being at the top of the list for the worst in the nation. Thank you for being here, everybody.
My name is Rosie Encinias. My son Leroy was murdered on October 15th by 4 repeat offenders who tied him up, handcuffed him, hog-tied him, and beat him to death. We have 3 of them on the streets right now. 1 is still in jail. And we've got to do something. We cannot let this go on. Too many people are being hurt, killed, and they're out on the streets, just, you know, and it's really hard to see that. And so I am here to make sure that we stop that revolving cell door. They've got to be put away and pay for what they're doing. They do not deserve to be out on the streets.
My name is Katrina McAfee. My grandson was murdered November 28th last year, 2014. His murderers were on trial. 1 was convicted and I'm awaiting sentencing in February. And the other one is going to go on trial in July for the shooting. The other one was for beating him with a bat after he was shot. They were repeat offenders. They had ankle bracelets on. We need to make our state and just the United States better to live free again.
Thank you for coming. My name is Brenda Gonzalez. He was my nephew. We just want justice.
My name is Sabrina, and my brother Leroy was murdered in October, and I'm Rosie. There were 4 of them, and I'm angry.
Good evening, I'm Mary Eden. I'm Gordon's wife, and I'm here to support all of you who have suffered unspeakable losses.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. My name's Nicole Chavez. My son, Jaden Chavez Silver, was shot. He was at a house party in the summer. It was 9:45 at night on a Friday. It wasn't too late, and 2 out of the 3 that were arrested for shooting him were repeat offenders. One had just gotten his GPS monitor off at 3 o'clock that day. The other one had charges on him that hadn't even been indicted for yet at the time. As you all know, it's unspeakable, but I think that this way is a way for us to heal. And making these changes, I really think these 6 laws and making these changes and having the lawmakers here helps make a change. Because unfortunately, like I've told the other representatives that have been here, you know, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna keep fighting. We're gonna keep fighting until we see change. Because for us, our circumstances are never gonna change. Jaden's never gonna come back. You know, I've lost him. Lily's never gonna come back. And we can't have his death be in vain, your death be in vain. It's time for a change, and you know, I've seen enough, and you know, we're gonna keep fighting. So even if things don't change this year, we're gonna be here, and let's hope that our group grows so that we see change happen.
I'm Alan Garcia. Lily was my daughter. She was killed on October 20th of this year by a repeat offender who unfortunately had been out on the streets when unfortunately a lot of people that were there that day and even still can't understand why he was out on the streets. We've had tremendous support from not only the group, but also APD, the sheriff, state police, a few of the representatives that have decided to come out to join our group and talk to us about these laws that we need for this state. And the invitation has been sent out to everybody, so thank you to the ones that have come. You know, it's hard to talk, especially because, well, you guys know I really don't talk. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you, Nate. Thank you, Chief. It really means a lot to us that you guys would show up, especially short notice. I know you guys probably had other things to do, but thank you for being here.
I'm Veronica. I'm Lily's mom. Like Alan said, Lily was killed October 20th of this year. She was shot in the head, in the back of the head, from a repeat offender in a road rage incident. So we kind of have a twofold in our situation with road rage and a repeat offender. The individual that killed Liliana had numerous violent charges on him, was never convicted, but numerous charges on him. I don't want another family to bury their loved one because an idiot is out on the streets, because he wasn't convicted, because he was able to post bond, because he has a good lawyer, whatever the case. I think enough is enough already. I mean, just this past year, we've lost so many people. So many people. You know, and this is just a piece of the puzzle that we're doing. You know, just because the legislation is coming now in January, we're not gonna stop. You know, my next goal, my next step would be, you know, the district attorney's office. And then personally working with Chief. You know, Chief was there when Lily was killed. Him and his wife have come to my home and have shown us nothing but support, and I want to do the same for you guys. Christmas was hard. I should have had my 4-year-old with me. Rosie should have had her baby with her. You guys should have had your grandbaby with you. But unfortunately, we don't have them. And this is my way of making sure another mother doesn't have to go through this. Thank you guys for coming. And thank you, ladies, for coming as well and sharing your story with us.
Hi, my name is Daisy. I'm here to support Brianna. Her best friend was shot and killed on March 1st. He was only 19 years old with the handgun. He's been in trouble since he was young. He was a teenage boy. I'm her best friend's stepmom, sorry. And Christmas was hard to see her break down because the person who took her mom's life away is out and is able to spend time on Christmas with his family. And all she asked was to be with her mom. And I'm doing my hardest to be there for her. And it broke me down. It broke me down to see that 6-year-old crying because she had so many presents, but all she asked was for her mom to be there. She couldn't be there for her. And he's out there with his family, partying, drinking, doing whatever he can because he was able to bail for only $2,000. And that's not even enough. It's basically the state telling us that she was only worth $2,000. And that's not fair for her little daughter. So.
Hi, my name is Brianna. I'm here for Carla Estrada. I've met many of you before. And thank you for being here, and thank you for the new people as well. Her family wanted to be here, but we get very camera shy. I'm here to voice for her parents and for her daughter, like she said, just to see the hurt on her daughter's face. She doesn't understand why mommy's not home, why she just can't be with mommy. She slept with mommy every night in the same bed, and she hasn't been able to since March. Isaiah was 19 when he killed her. He had turned 19 in February. She died March 1st. Between February of 2014 and February of 2015, he had 8 arrests for trafficking charges. And as a juvenile, I'm not 100% positive from what I've heard, he was arrested at least 13 times for trafficking as well. He was on probation the night he murdered Carla. And he was drunk, he had a handgun, he was at a party at 4 o'clock in the morning. He got indicted for first degree, an open count of murder, and several other charges. They messed up on her case, the state, the DA's office, and they didn't meet a deadline. They were forced to let Isaiah out. About 3 weeks ago, they re-indicted him on the same charges. When he was re-indicted, they had court. He was re-indicted he turned himself in on a Monday. He had court on Friday. By Tuesday the next week, because they had to interview him for his house arrest and all that, or for his GPS monitoring, by Tuesday he was already out. So this last Tuesday, he got out and he got to spend Christmas with his family. And turns out this weekend, his brother went out and partied, same block that Carla was murdered on, and his brother was shot. Luckily, thank God for them, he was shot in the leg and he's gonna live. But I hope that they had a little bit of a scare, his family, on how it feels to lose a loved one, because his family will show up to court and laugh in Carla's parents' face. The parents of Isaiah do that. So does Isaiah. And like she said, he was bailed out with $2,000. He's here for support. He's shy.
My name's Nate Gentry. I'm the House Majority Floor Leader. And You know, with the rash of crimes we saw during the course of the summer and the fall, I began a series of meetings with people who we should be listening to up in Santa Fe, and those are you all. Those people who have experienced just terrible, terrible loss because of shortcomings in the criminal justice system. So initially we met with the Garrett family and Cole and Mr. Silver, and most recently we met with the Garcia family, and have been working very closely with them to draft legislation that will help prevent this from happening in the future, and working also with Chief Eden to make sure that law enforcement has all the tools they need. But you know, what we see repeating itself over and over again are people who should be in jail but aren't. And it happens in really a couple ways. One is they're not sentenced to be in jail for a long enough period, and they get out before they should and they can reoffend. Or during the time between them being arrested and them going to trial, they're let out again when they should, and they reoffend during that time. So we're doing everything we can from the legislative level to make sure that no one has to experience what you all have. So thank you all, most importantly, for being here and sharing your stories.
And I'm Gordon Eden. I'm the Chief of Police for the Albuquerque Police Department. And thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. I think I have a unique perspective because I started off my career as a state police officer and worked for the state for many years and have seen the legislature in action for many years. I was appointed by President Bush to be the United States Marshal for New Mexico and was United States Marshal here for over 8 years. And I got to see a system that really worked, and that's the federal courts. And I can tell you that spending days and days in federal court, seeing how the federal probation system works, how the federal parole system works, how mandatory minimums work, coming back into local law enforcement has probably been my most frustrating experience. We see the end result of repeat offenders. You've seen it once, maybe you've seen it twice. We see it every single day. My officers are frustrated, as are officers across the state of New Mexico, when we see the same people over and over. Just recently, a homicide occurred in Fort Hills. The suspect in that case had encountered my detectives many, many times over the past 6 or 7 years. And I think that if we look back, and I say a name to you, you'll know who she is, and it's Nadine Milford. And it wasn't until Nadine Milford became the voice for DWI advocacy in the state did we start to see real change in our DWI laws. And I think that you have an opportunity here to be the Nadine Milfords, the people that have a voice that is going to be heard in Santa Fe. And I sincerely appreciate the support that we've seen from you, Representative Gentry, and your leadership. And I don't say that from a political standpoint. I say it because he's here with us tonight, and the conversations that I've had with him over the past 3 or 4 months have been very productive. And so I appreciate the fact that you are here, because I have said this for my 40 years of experience in law enforcement, is the voice that seems not to be heard in Santa Fe are the victims. That we do so much to protect the rights of the suspect that the victims have been forgotten in our system. I didn't see victims fall through the cracks in the federal system. I saw a very unique support network through the United States Attorney's Office and how they support victims. And I would just like to see our system fixed. I'm a native New Mexican. This is my home. And I can tell you that it was not this way when I got into law enforcement in 1975. And I don't know what's happened to the system, but I know this. It's fractured, but we can fix it.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming. Like we've told the other representatives that have joined us, and we've talked to both of you before, and you've been very supportive and helpful in this whole, fight for change, which we really appreciate, is the fact that, we're not going anywhere. So any changes that we can try to make, we're going to make. Anything that we feel you need to hear about, we're going to tell you. In this room, we aren't as politically correct sometimes. People speak their frustrations and speak what's on their mind, and that's welcome here. Sometimes we get very angry when we're talking about certain subjects. When we had our first meeting, it sounded to me as though some of the lawmakers, unfortunately, that we put into office seem like they are trying to put more money into their pocket. Unfortunately, a lot of people that can pass bills are defense criminal attorneys. Some of our senators are, some of our representatives are. I did not know that until I saw what was happening, how to change laws, how they get passed. And, the further we dug into it, well, of course, these tougher laws aren't going to help their pocketbook. So when they come to our meetings, I tell them, I am going to make sure that people pay attention to what you're backing and what you're voting for and what you're trying to help. Are you trying to help our state and our city make tougher changes, or are you trying to help your pocketbook? Because we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep fighting until, we can't fight anymore. APD, you guys have been amazing. Our detectives actually worked together. Jody's been amazing through this whole situation. They were in constant contact with all of us. Unfortunately for Jaden, it took a few months to arrest anybody for his murder. And fortunately, in some of our other cases, it was a little faster. But they've been amazing. Nate's been amazing. I don't know if you guys all know, but he is the representative that I first spoke to, and he's the one that's been helping me on all of these bills here. Paul Pacheco's on the 3 strikes. But, he is phenomenal. If you need help, if you have questions about the law or how it works, he's always willing to help, and he's there to listen. And, I really appreciate that. We can go through these bills and look and see, what we've heard from people as far as, what may not pass, what they're looking for, or what the other representatives are asking, as far as city police officers and whatnot, in the last meetings, if you want to do that, unless other people have anything else they want to bring up.
I was thinking, since you're here, Chief, our main goal has been like with the legislation and stuff, but is there any way that we can help you in regards to maybe, obviously we need more officers out there. Obviously there's possibly resources that, we would need, like the criminal database that's number 3. In your opinion, with our voices, if that's okay with everybody, what would, what can we do?
Well, I think one of the things, just real quick, that if you look at each one of these, all of these have equally important value. I think when I look at, I would like to provide you with some names with some people who can help you that have really good expertise in some of these areas. But on number 3, the state of New Mexico is responsible for maintaining almost all the records that you see here. And these records are maintained either by the courts, or they're maintained by the New Mexico Department of Public Safety, or through the district attorney's office. So one of the people, one of the names that came to light when I was looking at this is, her name is Regina Chacon, and she's the bureau chief for the New Mexico Department of Public Safety. And she's the one that's responsible for running NCIC, the Consolidated Offender Query, as well as the Sex Offender Database. So Regina would be a very valuable resource to each and every one of you. And I can tell you that we've worked with her in the past. When I was the state cabinet secretary, we had a lot of difficulty in trying to get our sex offender laws changed. And Regina was one of the ones that became very important in understanding what was going to be required from the national standpoint. You have certain federal laws that you have to be careful not to trample on when you start looking at creating these criminal information databases. So she'd be one that could really help you out, and I could provide you with her work number.
That would be great.
Yeah, Regina is very, very good. Most of these, as we have discussed, either privately or collectively, is each and every one of these is going to be very, very important. The one that I don't see here, and that is, and I'll keep beating that drum as long as I'm around, is the mandatory minimums that takes the discretion away from the district attorney's office, whether it's this district attorney or any district attorney in the state. The mandatory minimums put the power of sentencing back into the hands of the judge. And those are guidelines that have to be followed, and the judge can only deviate up or down based on specific circumstances that are unique to that particular case. I see how well it works right now. I think most of you are aware that our United States Attorney's Office has become very active in working with not only our department, but the Sheriff's Department and the New Mexico State Police on what we call the worst of the worst.
Okay.
And we've seen great success in those cases. Some of the people that have committed very violent crime in our community, even this year, have already been sentenced and are serving time in federal prison. That's how fast the federal system works. It's not reckless. It's just they have very prescribed procedures that have to be followed. I believe that there are people out there that I would have to talk to them first to find out if they would be interested in it. But I think, quite frankly, and I would defer to you, in trying to get a bill put together now for mandatory minimums with the session starting in just 30 days would be really difficult.
Is there anyone trying to get that in yet?
I think, I want to say that Paul Pacheco is planning on introducing that.
Oh, is it?
So let me confirm, but.
I'm surprised they haven't told us.
Yeah, I think it might have already been introduced, but let me check.
Yeah, because that would be one that we're very interested in, that I think would make a huge difference if our go for it. I do have a question for you, Chief, because I know you are behind the curfew bill that we're trying to get passed. There have been representatives that were here last week, and they keep telling us, from the other party, they keep telling us that, you know, that's going to take APD officers away from the job they should be doing. You know, that's the excuse they keep giving us is, you know, they might not be backing this curfew bill because there might not be enough officers on the street, but you are in favor for it, just like we are for those 16-year-olds and younger that should not be on the streets between midnight and 5 a.m. Absolutely. So just so that you can defend that.
I think when you look at curfew bills and curfew legislation, it's a tool that parents, responsible parents, can use to help keep their kids out of trouble. I think when you look at curfew laws across the United States, it's not that the police are out there looking for curfew breakers. It's just another tool that a police officer can use if they believe that someone has been involved in a criminal activity. I would say that you will hear people say that we spend an extraordinary amount of time enforcing the marijuana laws. That is the furthest from the truth. It's just another law that if it's there and we find something else that's usually more serious, that's another charging offense. We are not out looking for people that have small amounts of narcotics in possession. That's not what we do. The curfew bill would just give what I believe first is parents, responsible parents, another tool to help them with parenting. But number two, it gives us an extra tool when there is suspicious activity going on to take that next step. So I believe their argument is it's not a valid argument.
I agree. So I'm just hoping that we know, and especially you as the chief, would tell them APD is not going to make it their priority to go and look for teenagers out past curfew. That is definitely not what your officers are going to be doing. It's going to be for specific, real issues of concern, I think, on the streets. Because, I mean, just like in Steve's case, that mob of teenagers did not need to be out on the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And that's what you guys are positioning that.
Right, and so I know they did make some changes on it a couple weeks ago, Nate,
yeah,
where it actually is teenagers younger than 16, and the hours are from midnight to 5 a.m. So if somebody has a job early, maybe they're a grocery store worker at Walmart, so they need to be there at 6 a.m. Or you know, older teenagers have jobs that are, you know, later hours, so that doesn't really affect them. I don't know. Nate, maybe you want to talk on that.
yeah, and you know, I think it's important to remember that it allows counties and municipalities to impose a curfew. It doesn't mandate a statewide curfew. So, you know, if the city of Albuquerque or the city of Gallup or Raton determines that it's not something they want to do, they don't have to do it. But you know, I agree with Nicole that, you know, certainly there's no good that can come of a 14-year-old or a group of, you know, 3 14-year-olds, you know, roaming the streets at 3 in the morning. And for really 2 reasons. One, for the safety of the community. I think we saw that in, you know, Steve Garrick's case. And then also, you know, there have been several instances where I think there was a 14 or 15-year-old, and that's why, you know, Ken Sanchez, who's the Democrat city councilor, actually asked the legislature to carry this. You know, there was a 14-year-old at a skate park at, I think, 3 in the morning in his district who was shot and killed. So it's also for the safety of, you know, these kids who, you know, probably shouldn't be out for their own safety at 4 in the morning.
Is there any other?
I have a question. When a minor, well, not really a minor, but an Isaiah, in my friend's case, Isaiah was 19, and the handgun he had killed my friend with, say if it was his mom's handgun, can his parents be charged with some kind of like neglect of a firearm, being that he killed somebody with their firearm, regardless if he stole it from them or not? And like, isn't that like a crime?
Not specifically. I think where you see the action being taken is in civil litigation, where someone sues somebody in a wrongful death suit. You would see that more frequently than you would in a criminal case.
I just feel like his mom should have some fault in the murder because it was her weapon. You know, it was her weapon that killed Carla, and why is she leaving it where her 19-year-old who's on probation and drinking, obviously an out-of-control teenager, isn't out? And that just infuriates me. I'm just like, why?
Even if you're on probation, in the house, you're not supposed to have any weapons or drugs, correct?
It depends on what has been directed by the courts as far as what they can and cannot have. There is federal law that prohibits a felon in it. You have to be able to prove a convicted felon for possessing a firearm. So that's what we have been using with the United States Attorney's Office, is that when we find felons, and again, it's convicted felons, and they have to have prior history of violent activity, that they do possess a firearm. We're working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to have them charged federally. We do have firearm statutes in this state, but I can tell you that, again, being in law enforcement for as long as I have, I very rarely see those charges go forward.
Also, one more question. Now that he's on probation and GPS monitoring, if I got a picture from his Facebook that says the day he got out, he's in the background and his brother's holding a gun in front of a mirror, is that wrong because he's on probation? Should I turn that into, who should I turn that into?
You should probably turn that into their probation officer.
Okay, sounds good.
Which you can get from the district.
Yeah.
attorney's
I
office.
can just call you.
Yeah, I think in their case, that's been one of the main issues is that this guy's out and about flaunting the fact that he's on the streets and
It sounds like he doesn't care about.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. It sounds bad, but he definitely he didn't care about Carla, and it's sad to say it like this. I mean, he doesn't care about the badge either.
No.
I guarantee if
Oh no, he says it on there.
I mean,
He was all for the guy who killed Webster. Oh, F those pigs, they deserve it. What? Like how, like, ugh, it just makes me sick. Like how do you don't care. And I mean, God forbid, but now that he's out again, is it gonna take him killing one of your officers for them to be like, well, damn, we shouldn't have let him out on $2,000. Maybe we should have left his bail at $250,000 cash on.
Well, that's why I think number 6 will be very helpful if it passes. And I know that there is a lot of people that are in favor of this bill, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Nate?
Correct.
And there's already been conversations that they've had about it or meetings, so that it actually lets the judges make those, decisions as far as bail and no bail, which I think should be considered a lot more than giving some kind of bail because it's constitutional, even though, they murdered somebody. So number 6 is very important.
How I had mentioned earlier how Isaiah's brother was shot this weekend. The murder that happened with Arturo Villa? Well, Isaiah's brother was with them, and that's how he got shot. He was the 3rd victim that got shot in the thigh, which he's still in the hospital or whatever. Is there a way to check to see if Isaiah was there through his GPS monitor to see if Isaiah was at that party? Because that day on Facebook, he was going to party it up. And where was he partying it up? He's always with his brother. So isn't there a way for us to find out if he was at that party? And then that's right there, a violation of his
Condition of
Yeah,
release.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you'd have to go back to the probation.
So just bring it up to the probation, all of that, okay.
Yes, that's how my grandson's killers were caught, using their GPS. That was the only thing that
Really?
caught them was their GPSs. It put them right there, those times, those places, like following one another.
Wow.
And they don't care, like he said.
Oh, he doesn't.
Sat there and I watched the video of him and he sat there laughing and said, I had a GPS, how could I be there? You know?
You had GPS, that's why you were there.
Yeah.
I know.
well, I did want to thank, before we get too far into it, I wanted to thank you two for being here. We have reached out to a few different representatives and senators, and I wanted to say this because I don't want everybody to think that, oh, we're just talking to Republicans. Oh, this is a political move for anybody. It's not. Unfortunately and fortunately, the people that have stepped up to help happen to be Republicans. We've had some Democrats. They've stepped up and they see the good that the laws are doing. They're not looking at, what color tie I'm wearing. It's not about that. And I wanted you guys to really understand that it's not political with us. It's, ensuring that Carla's daughter could be riding down the street with her dad or a family member and not have to worry about making it home. We're not gonna solve all the evil in the world, unfortunately. But if I know for a fact, if our laws were tougher, and I know you would agree with me on this one, Chief, and everybody else would, people would think twice about pulling out that gun, pulling out that deciding, oh, no one's around, I'm gonna shoot this cop, I'm gonna shoot this individual. Thinking that there's no, unfortunately, what I'm seeing in our state legal system is a slap on the wrist. You know, these criminals are treated way better than any of us in the room, unfortunately. We wake up, we go to work. You know, you've taken on the responsibility of representing us in Santa Fe, and on top of everything you got going on, you still go and do that. No one told you to be a cop. It was a choice you made, and I'm glad you are. You know, the conversations that me and you've had in private mean a lot to me. You know, everybody knows, I mean, I've put my life on the line. Well, you know, for everybody that believes in our Stars and Stripes, you know. I did that for 14 years and I did a very good job of it. I never once thought coming home I'd be burying my daughter. I would take her place in a heartbeat. You know, and we need you know, with the media coverage and everything, I really want them to understand in Santa Fe that it's not political. I'm sick and tired of reading on my posts, people, oh, you're only talking to Republicans. They're the only ones coming out. They're the only ones that seem to care.
Well, and we've had two Democrats.
Yes, we have.
Senator Ivy Soko and Jacob Candelaria, who is helping that.
And they've been awesome. You know,
it's not political. And as I told them in one of my first meetings, I think we had several Democrats there. That's when I said, you know, I am a registered Democrat myself, and unfortunately, you know, I am getting the help from a Republican in the Democrats' case, because it seems like, you know, they're more interested in their personal issues or personal pocketbooks than changing laws. And like I told them, we're not going anywhere. We will not go anywhere. We will bring up any changes that I feel need to be made for city. I mean, Chief Eden, for instance, I have a question about first responders and how they answer calls from my personal issue. You know, I understand there's not a database like other states have when, based on the injury, you know, the operator can say, do this, this, and this, instead of just ask them, are they still breathing for 4 minutes over and over again. You know, I would like to see changes made there as far as the system.
Leaving them on hold for 30 minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like we said, it's not political. We just want to see changes for the better.
Is there a way through, I mean, since we're out doing all this through the legislation, but like on the city side, I mean, is there any way that this group can help? I mean, is it like city council that we need to go to?
Or budget?
I mean, you know, what information can you give us to at least, you know, do here in Albuquerque? I mean, besides doing what we're trying to do in Santa Fe.
Well, there's a piece of legislation that will be introduced that's for return to work for police officers. And I can tell you that's going to be a very important piece of legislation for us. I firmly believe that when you start looking back, that when return to work is no longer an option for, especially for police officers, that's when we start to see the huge decline in the numbers of people that we have with the Albuquerque Police Department. The changes that went into effect, or that have been going into effect actually through the public employees retirement, it's been devastating for all of law enforcement across the state. And we had a mayor's conference in Albuquerque, I believe it was 2 months ago, and every single mayor is supporting the return to work for law enforcement. And it's a fix, and I say it's a sound fix. But one of the things I can tell you is that when you have veteran police officers leave 20 to 25 years on, and it's a financial decision. It's not a decision that they don't love this job anymore, but it's a financial decision. They have to take care of their family. It's their future. And in the exit interviews I've been doing with the officers that are leaving now under retirement, it's all financial. It's a fiscal impact if they don't.
The money's not here. They're not getting paid.
And is this going to be where they get the retention bonus for staying, or is this a different
No, what
bill?
it does is it allows them to return to work and be a police officer. They come back into the department. It depends on the makeup of that department. But in our department, they come back as a patrol officer. And they're not allowed to advance through the ranks. They're not allowed to move to any other positions. They have to bid on positions just like everybody else. But I think it was at the beginning of the month, we were at a statewide law enforcement conference, and one of the things I heard from the sheriffs is that they used to use return to work officers to do things like courthouse security, transport prisoners, and now they've lost that pool of people that are willing to do that. And so return to work is an important thing, not only for the city of Albuquerque, but it'll be for law enforcement throughout the state. For years and years and years, you look at the history of some of the smaller police departments throughout the state, their chiefs of police have come from the retired ranks of other law enforcement agencies, and now, right now, you can't do that. So once you retire, you have to give up a pension to go back to work.
And I guess my question for that, for the people that are arguing the issue, because I completely agree, I have a few friends that are retired APD, is they've already earned their pension because they put in their years of service. And somebody else that's brand new is going to earn that same paycheck. So it's really not saving the state any money at all, because the paycheck is still going to be going to the new officer. The other pension check is still going to be going to the retired officer. So I don't understand why they don't just maybe adjust their para contribution, as active employees, and let them come back in, because we're not going to be saving any money if that paycheck is still going out to the new officer and the paycheck is still going to the pension. I don't understand the problem, I guess.
Well, and I think
piece
once
to
we're
put
able
it?
to explain it to everybody, which I know is going to happen, I believe, pretty soon, you'll actually see that the city and the officer, the return to work officer, whoever they work for, whether it's the city, county, or the state, they still continue to pay into PERA as a return to work, but they never reap any benefit from it. So it's really not true double dipping. When I think of double dipping, I think of someone who retired from, let me give you an example, like Sandia National Labs, and now they come to work for the city and they're trying to earn a second pension. Our system that's set up, they're not eligible to earn additional pension benefit. All they're allowed to do is return to work.
And I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't understand why people are arguing it. Is it not right that that paycheck and the pension would be going out anyway? So it's truly not going to save the city or state any money, because those funds are still going to be going out to whoever's filling that position, correct? Okay. So I don't understand
have you
that.
explain it. You seem to get it.
It just seems like, am I missing something?
No, you.
I mean, because we get, say, I know plenty of people that have retired as officers or just military, and they're getting their payout for federal, and then they go work at Sandia National Labs, and then they still get their pension from Sandia after they retire. So they're still
So sadly, what's
earning
happening,
their retirement.
So sadly, what's happening is I've had 2 officers retire this month, and both of them are leaving the state to go back into police work. So what we've lost now is we've lost them here as taxpayers, because they're now moved to 2 different states, but we're still paying their pension. And the other thing I think that has hurt our state, and I've said this over and over and over again, unless you've lived in another state than New Mexico, and then you come back and you realize what a beautiful state we have, what beautiful cultures we have. It's really hard for somebody not being here for a long period of time to really understand the different traditions that we all have, that we all share. And us being able to keep those people here as police officers with that 20 to 25 years of knowledge, and then making sure that we have them being available as a resource to the department through return to work. It's a big loss. You think of the amount of money in the city, the county, and the state's invested in training this officer, maintaining their certification, and you see that valuable asset leave, and they go to work at Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, they go to work in Denver, they go to work in Aurora, they're going to work in Texas, Florida. It's hurt us.
Yeah, that's very sad. I mean, I just don't agree because it seems like the same pay is going out, so that doesn't make sense, but I agree.
So what about, sorry, what about like new officers coming in? I mean, what do you have in mind? I mean, obviously you've been working with Mayor Barry, but I mean, if we can't keep the older officers, I guess is the best way, you know, what can we do to, you know, recruit more officers to over here? I mean, is there talk about, you know, obviously financial is a big thing. I mean, obviously that's somebody's, you know, livelihood. But
can they get a sign-on bonus or something?
Well, I think one of the things that I'll share with you really quick is that we changed our whole recruiting ability. Because quite frankly, when I became the chief, we were doing recruiting the old-fashioned way, and quite frankly, it doesn't work. And that old-fashioned way was doing recruiting fairs. And so here's the Albuquerque Police Department recruiting, and right next to us is the booth for Sandia National Labs. And it's two different types of people looking at a career. So we started doing what everybody does now, is that we are out on the World Wide Web recruiting. And we're recruiting people at a really good rate. And I say that because I've met with chiefs from San Francisco, the undersheriff from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and they're asking us, how come your numbers are so good? And I won't tell them because if they take on our model, they won't be able to recruit. But I think the misunderstood part of it is this, is I can have 1,000 people apply, and by the time they get through the testing, I'm down to maybe 30 that can meet the qualifications, get through all the testing that's required. So we have a class that we just seated today, and we probably screened in excess of 700 to get 35.
Wow.
So that kind of tells you that the requirements work. We screen out people that should not be police officers. And so we're doing well, and I can say that because I do have an opportunity to meet with chiefs and sheriffs from all over the United States. And while we are in desperate need of additional police officers, I look at the numbers when I talk to my colleagues from Los Angeles or anywhere in California, Arizona, Nevada. It's a problem right now nationwide as far as finding what we call well-qualified applicants that can pass the rigors of the testing.
Have you tried to, do you think it would help if you went to high schools and colleges and then brought in your specialist team? So maybe someone from SWAT or maybe someone, you know, from different parts of the department could come and present on what they do. And then, you know, for high school kids, they can look at that police aids that you have. And then college kids would be great candidates. But it's people that are still learning and, you know, their brains are a little fresher. And maybe when they hear about all the great things that APD can bring and the different job opportunities that you have, maybe that would help in recruiting people from our own state, the youth.
And we do that. We have a great partnership with both C&M and Albuquerque Public School. During the summer, we have a program with Albuquerque Public Schools, and that's to encourage those kids that are 16, 17, 18, if they want to become a public safety aide, there's a way for them to, career path for them, for the department. And then, it's been a year ago that we created it's called our Community Recruiting Council, and that council came up with several recommendations that we have put in place, and we've seen our numbers go up, and that's because of our partnership with C&M, UNM, Eastern New Mexico University, Western New Mexico University, Highlands.
That's great. I just think it would help if, I mean, summer kids, having teenagers myself, they don't like to think of anything other than summer. And it's great for them to start thinking early on, at least, you know, juniors, seniors. Maybe you can go to each APS high school during school, you know, and present or talk to them at an assembly or something.
I've got a couple of questions. And specific to the numbers there, I know that the night that Officer Webster was murdered, that there was a pretty rough shortage of R.O.b.D officers on duty. What are the numbers today in terms of the officers in relation to what our population calls for?
Well, so I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had a staff study done. The gentleman, his organization, his company that did the staffing study said the Albuquerque Police Department needs 1,000 officers, and right now we're at 830. And we are actually funded by City Council for the full 1,000 right now. And so that's what the staff study says. I think that where we are lopsided, and the study clearly states it, is that we need more people in the Field Services Bureau, and that's one of the things we're working on. Is that me?
She's not sure what you said.
Sorry, Sherry. But anyway, that's one of the things that we're working on right now. I put together a working group that will have their second meeting, I believe it's tomorrow, and we'll be doing a completely decentralization of the department and reauthorizing resources out to the field. So all of that has to go through contract negotiations. All of that has to go through the union process. But the union is one of the ones that has been saying that they want more people out of field services. So I believe that we'll have the support of the union when it comes to having the right number of people out in field services.
So we're not that far off on the number. Now, you mentioned 35 in a new class. How many classes?
Well, we have a class going on right now. There's 38 left in it. They'll graduate in March, and then they'll go through about 6 months of on-the-job training. So the best way for me to explain it is the date that they start the academy until they're out on their own is a little bit longer than a year. So the 35 that'll start in January, they won't be out on their own until January 17. The last classes we've had have actually been good in size. If you go back and you look, I think one time they graduated 9. I don't remember. But since we've changed our recruiting, since we've gone through and really revamped the academy, and the way the academy operates, we've seen great success in not losing people. So 2 of the people that we lost in this class that's going on right now, the reason we lost both of them was due to hardship, family hardships, with either a dying parent or a critically ill child. So we're starting to see people leave for what I say the right reasons. They understand that family is more important than they have to be with their family. And those we hope will rejoin us in the class when we start in January. So we've really changed the format of the academy, and we've turned it into a mentoring process, which I believe we're probably the only police department in the United States that actually has mentoring from the day they start their training until they complete all of their training, which includes their field officer training.
So it's not, you're not just grabbing it from the streets 2 weeks and you're back out
At
there.
the old days. Raise your right hand, here's your gun, here's your badge, go do it. Yeah.
So
It's very structured.
So with that, it's going to take us a little bit of time. What can we do as a group? How can we mobilize the communities that we live in? How can we start doing some community policing until those numbers are achieved? What can we do so
that'll really make a change?
You know, we're creating some awareness. Obviously, that's what this group is about: is to create awareness, you know, across the entire state and beyond. But starting right in our very own backyards. I mean, what are some of the things that we can do? I mean, is it, you know, getting involved with, you know, our neighborhood associations, community police projects?
So we have our community policing councils, which we started. I would have to actually go back and look, but I think they're about now 14, 15 months in existence. They're in each one of the area commands. We have 6 area commands within the city, so depending upon where you live, you'd have to find out which area command you're in. It's all on our website. So you can access it through our website or through the City of Albuquerque's website. The demands that are placed on the community policing councils is this: we want your input and your advice on how to be a better police department and how do we best serve you. And that's one of the things that we're committed to, and that's one of the big organizational changes that we will have in the police department. As we grow our numbers back up, we're actually going to have a lieutenant and 2 sergeants and 12 officers that are doing nothing, but they're dedicated to stay in that area command for 3 years and to work with our community policing councils to really get to know everybody in the neighborhood. Our bidding process right now by contract is every year they get to bid days off, shift, and area command. So very rarely will you find people stay in the same area command longer than 2 years. So with a 3-year commitment from the officers, the 2 sergeants, and the lieutenant that they will stay there for at least 3 years, it starts to build that stability within each one of the area commands. So that was one of the new additions that we asked. When we sat down with our consultant and said, you know, do you think this is something that will work? And then we actually gave them some places where I've seen it work. And so that's part of our findings of our staff study. So our CPCs, our community policing councils, have been very good information for us. They see things that we don't see. And they hear things that we don't hear. So we found them to be very productive. And some of the feedback that we continue to get from them has really helped us too.
And how often do they meet?
Well, each one is different. They all try to meet at least once a month.
But it depends on the command that is in your.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you go to the area command, you'll find out that I think Southwest is still meeting. I think they meet every other week. Foothills is every other week. I think Northeast is once a month.
Okay.
It just depends. They set their own rules. They're not part of city government, and they're not part of the police department. They're truly standalone groups.
Kind of like us.
Yeah, I was gonna say just fix the ones that we change.
Yeah. And I actually see you as being a mechanism for them to help make recommendations to us.
And then just since most of us, or the group, was repeat offenders, whatever happened to the R.O.b.D team? And for those of you that don't know, I believe it was specifically for repeat offenders. Wasn't it a task force for repeat offenders?
The repeat offender unit was specifically mentioned in the findings of the Department of Justice, and the department agreed to disband that unit. So it sounds terrible, but we still have people doing the same type of work, but now they're assigned to either the FBI. The FBI has a task force, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms has a task force, and so does the Marshal Service. They all have fugitive task forces. So what we've done is we've taken some of those resources and applied them to those task forces. We're still out there doing
So they
very,
said
very
that
good
we
work.
just couldn't have that anymore at APD.
Correct.
Because
You'd have to read the findings letter.
Because they like or dislike a green chili.
Yeah. But I think the most important thing is that we are still making fugitive apprehensions. We are still working, but we're working now and understand the environment that we're working in. A lot of the things that I talked about, the mandatory minimums, felon in possession of a firearm. I can't do that as a police chief. We can't do it as a city police department, but we can do it through our federal partners. So by strengthening those federal partners, we're able to take those violent convicted felons who are in possession of a firearm and do parallel cases, one on the federal side and then the one on the state side.
I hope I'm not out of place to ask this or ask a question in your meeting. My name is Maggie. I'm a reporter from the Journal. I also live here. It's my hometown. A lot of the bills you all are supporting have to do kind of with the back end of repeat offenders. And I'm curious what you think about how those repeat offenders became repeat offenders. What's causing our repeat offenders? And what are you kind of thinking about doing to possibly address the front side instead of the back side of it?
personally, in my opinion, I think that those changes need to be made through the district attorney's office or just the city and state as far as their laws. In my personal opinion, and I don't know if it's possible or how long down the road that could be, I do have a meeting with the district attorney next week, actually, and I was going to ask her, I was wondering if there was any way for us to be able to prioritize the cases for the individuals. So here's violent criminals, and then here's, 4 people that got arrested for marijuana possession. Is there any way, because these violent criminals are violent criminals, can't they prioritize the way the district attorney's office actually indicts them and processes their cases instead of apples to apples, because they're not. To me, I think it should really be prioritized.
I'm kind of curious, even further back, I mean, how are we as a community getting so many violent people? Whether they're arrested or not, what's happening in our culture, in our community that's generating so many people who do these things is what I'm curious about.
That's on a much grander or larger scale. I mean, there's what we're looking at is a 1,000-piece puzzle, right? And this right here, this group right here, and this proposed legislation change is just one piece of that, one small piece of that puzzle. And we've had the discussion in our group. Okay, how did these guys get to where they're at?
Right.
How did they get there in the first place? What happened in their life that has caused them to be who they are and do the things that they do? And you can ask everybody, and we'll probably all come up with 20 different answers on how it's happened. But I think that as a whole, and Yvonne, we've talked about this. It starts when they're kids. Okay, it starts when they're kids, and the things that we have in place for them at the very young age, right? Education, and we've talked about all kinds of other things. One of the other big things is substance abuse, and not really addressing that problem. And not just substance abuse, mental health. Those two things, coexist, if you will. But there's the mental health side, and then there's the
in a perfect world, also the parents are responsible, but not every parent is going to be like, Alan and I, not a lot of parents are going to be, be like you folks. Obviously we want good for our kids, and if our kids get in trouble, like Yvonne says, make them pay. They got to be responsible for what they did. But there's a lot of parents that don't care, that have lived that life, that have had generations that are in and out of jail. with substance abuse or mental illness, and never received help, never have wanted to get help for it or anything like that. I mean, I can understand it's, you know, on a parent side, but you know, in a perfect world, every parent that has a child is going to do the best that they, you know, want for their child. But unfortunately, there's mothers out there, there's fathers out there that don't care. You know, they don't care at all. You know, and unfortunately, I don't think there's an actual answer to fix that problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that play into.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would help with juvenile psychologists maybe in the jail system to start studying. I mean, if we knew, trust me, I would try to help that in a second, or start some kind of treatment options for drug abuse.
I'll even say this about treatment, and to your point, you know, and I'll just, you know, say from my own experiences, I had a wonderful mother. You know, she was a single mom, raising 4 kids. She worked 3 jobs. She was, you know, she couldn't be around. And it wasn't because of her lack of effort in trying to teach us and raise us the right way. She was just, you know, she was trying to make it. And a lot of the time, you know, I was left to myself, and, you know, heck, I was a bad kid. Not because my mom didn't try or anything like that, but, you know, I went through what I went through, and I continue to go through what I went through until I was ready to grow up and make that change, right? And that's the same way that I see a lot of these, you know, repeat offenders. They're continuing on in what they know because they're not ready. Their eyes have not been opened. They have not been hit in the face with the reality of life and the wreckage that they're causing our community. And until that happens, then no matter what we do from a treatment standpoint, you can come and talk to them until their ears fall off, and until they're ready for that, then nothing's going to happen. And so knowing that, and knowing that that's what the mindset is of these repeat offenders, then what's the next best thing?
Getting comfortable.
Lock them up.
Yep.
And you guys aren't going anywhere until they do, right?
Yep.
Right. And I think we've all tried to put our brains together and think, you know, what's the answer? Does it start when they're juvenile offenders? What can the state do differently? What can the city do differently? You know, then there's that whole, what is it? What do they call it? School pipeline? Yeah. Pipeline something. You know, people are talking about juveniles that get in trouble. Are they dropping out of school, or do they stay in school? Can they do something to the parents, you know, that aren't held accountable? I don't think any of us have a crystal ball to know the answer to any of that.
So why not then, I mean, why isn't one of the bills on the list that you're proposing maybe like a allocation for more mental health funding or something like that?
I'll answer that. This is because everything has transpired so quickly, and with the session coming up in just a few weeks, these are the ones that you guys have worked on that could make some immediate change, an impact. Again, just like Nicola said, just like Veronica said, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
They're not going anywhere.
And there actually
is this session.
Yeah, there's a longer answer to that. And at our first meeting, actually, one of the new representatives that just came into office, he was an APD officer. Rio Lobo. He has actually been instrumental in starting or making changes to offenders at Atrisco Heritage is where he works now. He's APS police. But he has a really long strategic plan for treatment, substance abuse, mental health, and programs for that.
So it's not that those aren't ones that you're considering, it just sounds like these are the ones
These are the ones
first,
now, but he's been there, and he actually, I think if you sit him down and ask him about some things he's trying to make changes to, because he's new in office, they were very, very interesting. If you hear his statistics on the way he's changed his program at Atrisco Heritage for juveniles that have had offenses instead of going through the actual system.
Handling their at Atrisco.
And he has a long-term plan, but again, it's long-term plan, and that we're all for. But right now, we were trying to just prioritize these right before the legislative session. So after that's over, you know, whatever happens, unfortunately, is going to happen. And like we said, we'll continue to fight for these next year. But in the meantime, we are going to work on those long-term issues.
Thank you for taking my question.
Yeah, you're okay.
I wanted to say that, I think, you know, as you were saying, it's a 1,000-piece puzzle. And I'm a teacher, so I feel like I kind of have a perspective on this. And I don't know if this is across the country or specific to New Mexico, but I know that there is a philosophy here in New Mexico that everybody should go to college. And I don't dispute that. But being a teacher, I see some kids that they may want to go to college later on, but right now they're not going to. And they fall through the cracks. And so they end up dropping out of school. They find themselves with a lot of time on their hands, no place really to go, and then they get caught up in these kinds of things. I think that it would be a good idea nationwide, but certainly in New Mexico, to bring back the idea of introducing the trades to the schools. They do that in Europe, you know, and it's not looked down on. It's like the student gets to make the choice, and if they want to follow a career path, well, that's where their curriculum goes. If they would like to get trained in one of the trades, that's where their curriculum goes. And I think that we're losing too many young people because there's not enough options. The idea is that everybody should go to college. And I'm here to tell you, I wasn't going to go to college until I came to Albuquerque and figured out maybe I ought to go to college because I didn't want to go to work. Now I go to work, and it's a different story. But what I'm saying is that in my young age at that time, that was my thinking. And now I'm a teacher, and I see a lot of kids that really don't connect with school. Not because they're not interested, not because it just doesn't ring their bell. Now I'm thinking if we can give them something to do with their hands and their time and teach them a trade, at least there's some hope. When they graduate or they complete that training, they can go get a job. And quite frankly, a lot of those trades pay more than teacher salaries do. So I think that we need to take the stigma away from the trades and begin to offer our young people other opportunities. And then that'll take care of another one of those pieces of that puzzle. But I see a lot of kids just give up for 1,000,001 reasons, and valid reasons too. And then what? Then they end up on the street. And that's where we lose them to the crimes that we're seeing. And so that is, in my opinion, we need to, well, New Mexico is at the top of the list for the worst in child care and care for our elderly. And we are also, I do believe, number 2 in the nation for one of the most violent cities. That's a pathetic distinction. We should not tolerate that. We should not accept that. And we should look around, think outside the box and think, why are we losing so many young people? Some of it is because the options are very narrow and limited. And I'd like to see that change in this city. Give our young people more options. I mean, we're trying this solution, and it's obviously not working. What have we got to lose by trying something else?
I agree. I know for high school at Manzano, there's electives for shop. I think there's wood shop. There's some classes for construction, and then the rest are trainers and whatnot. But when I grew up in my small town in Arizona, there was no mechanic shop, and then there was 4-H. And
sure, there was
a lot of other options.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would help.
Yeah, even music was there, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've heard is that criminals are coming to New Mexico because of our laws. And so it's easy for them to do their thing here in New Mexico. Is that something that you think is true?
No, it is true.
It is.
It is. And the reason I say that is that long before I was the police chief and I was still the U.S. Marshal, we were seeing that with sex offenders because that was one of the jobs of the United States Marshal Service was to track sex offenders. And we saw that trend. And there was back in probably about 2008 or 9, a pretty good sized criminal enterprise that was discovered here in New Mexico, and they had moved here from Memphis. They were a Memphis street gang that had moved here, and I believe if you go back and look through the archives, both the Albuquerque Journal as well as the other media outlets ran stories on this gang that had come to New Mexico. They were committing a lot of property crimes. We hear it, and then when you start to look at some of the criminal history of some of the people that we arrest, you see that their criminal record started off in other places than New Mexico. I don't think I don't think it's as big as everybody may believe it to be, but it's happening. We're one of the few states that doesn't have a gang law.
That's
so
crazy.
you look around.
We don't have a gang law?
No.
No, and that's crazy. When I was looking,
What is a gang
trying to
law?
be my own investigator.
A gang law basically states that it's a group of people, usually it's 3 or more, who engage in criminal activities together is considered a gang. It's kind of the national definition. I say we, the law enforcement community, has been trying to get legislation passed. I know I was the U.S. Marshal, so that was back in 2002, that the New Mexico Gang Task Force had tried to get gang legislation passed through the state, and they've never been successful.
What stops that? Is it the same committees? No, I mean, are there bills written up and then they don't pass?
I can give you an example because I was a federal employee, and you're not allowed to engage in state legislative matters. But in one of the hearings that occurred in like 2004, probably 2005, it said the definition of gang is an organization of 3 or more people who are engaged in a criminal enterprise. And one of the state senators made a comment, well, that would include the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and everybody else, which was not
this
true.
one of the criminal defense attorney senators?
I don't know exactly who it was, but I know that
Are they still
In office?
in office?
they could be.
They could be?
That's
You
a
can't
yes.
say, or-
I think the subject
Is this
matter
something
expert is. They've been around for years as the New Mexico Gang Task Force. They've been around for many, many years.
So
And
Maybe
they
we
can talk
get
to you
them
about,
yeah, come and
what's the responsibility of our gang units now?
well, our gang units actually identify street gangs, and that information based on criminal conviction goes into one of these criminal offender databases. So when you start looking at how do states effectively make sure that gangs don't have a big influence, is through effective legislation, through enhancements. So if you're a member of a gang or a criminal enterprise and you're involved, then there's enhanced penalties. So when you don't have gang laws, there's no enhanced penalties. And it's the same thing that we see with, we do have a state statute, felon in possession of a firearm, but you very rarely see them being convicted.
And that's what's happening in our case.
Right. So, part of all of this solution is, and I'll say it over and over, is we have to start putting our criminal justice system back together. It's fractured, and we just need to work better, smarter. And I think what's frustrating from my standpoint, because I used to work in the state, is that we bring what was effective state legislation from Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Pennsylvania, and we bring it to the legislature, and we would never get traction.
And that's our frustration, and that's what we vocalized to the representatives that were at our first meeting. And that's when we came to the realization that they were half of the people that were not letting these bills through on those so-called kill committees here in the state. They're criminal defense attorneys, and it's not in their best interest, or they're really close with the bail bondsmen, and they're getting upset at these new laws, and that frustrates me so much, because I often think, would they still feel the way they feel and fight for weaker laws if Jaden was their son, or Lily was their daughter, would they have a change of heart? I think so. And this is just happening so many times over and over again. And even the city and the state and our community is saying enough is enough. I don't understand how they are still trying to kill these tougher laws. That's the thing that we are really trying to fight for. And that's what we're really trying to fight for, if you're asking, is how can we get their attention to let them know enough is enough? You know, they've been there in office for years and years and years, and they are the ones that continue to kill these bills so they never hit the streets, so us as voters can vote on them to pass them. We all want tougher laws, whether it means we have to pay 50 cents more out of our paycheck for, you know, a bigger budget. I don't know what it's going to take for them to hear us and actually pass these tougher laws through. Because if you look at the states next to us, Arizona and Texas, we are ridiculous as far as our laws, as far as our penalties, everything. It is sad.
We're gonna have to go shake up the state house.
It's so sad.
Bring your band.
What's that?
I said we're gonna go have to shake up the state house. You're gonna have to bring your band, and so everybody can hear us from Santa Fe.
For those of you guys who don't know, they are members of a very big band.
Infamous.
But yeah, I mean, it is mind-blowing that, you know, these human beings, you know, that have family that aren't passing these laws. That's amazing to know that there's no gang law. That is just mind-blowing.
That they didn't pass them.
Yeah, it's like common sense stuff, you know.
And New Mexico has been trouble. About 2 weeks ago, maybe more now, 3 weeks ago, I heard on KOAT News that 2 of the drug cartels are in competition for who's going to take over Albuquerque. I find that pretty scary. All I'm saying is I heard it on KOAT, and even if it's halfway true, I believe it, and I consider it scary.
Whatever you see on Google is true.
Is that true?
The Google. The Google.
Where does it?
No.
No, I hope not.
I think sometimes you have to just take 2 steps back and think about the reality of what may or may not be told. And I'm very, very cautious, both from my experience on the federal side and now my experience where I am right now in recognizing that we have to be really careful what we say about our state. Is we are really not a safe haven state.
No.
No.
What's good about New Mexico is we are New Mexico. And I think, again, what's been frustrating for me is that we see good legislation in other states and we try to bring it here and we hit brick walls. And when you want to talk about the safety and security of our state, I will tell you it lies with our children. Mm-hmm. And it's generational. And one of the things we have to do is we just have to make a better, stronger generation and trust them. You know, and we can all sit back and remember the thoughts and what our parents told us and what our grandmas told us and what our nanas told us. And just remember that, you know, what's unique about New Mexico is who we are. And I said it the other day in a press conference, and I've said it many times since then. I grew up here. This is not the Albuquerque. This is not the state of New Mexico that I grew up in. And to me, that's become the most troubling part. And, this is not the community I grew up in. I grew up in a town where it was safe to leave your car windows down at night. Mm-hmm. It was safe to leave your car's keys in the ignition. It was safe not to have to lock the front door. So what has changed? You could say this has happened nationwide. It has happened nationwide. But I think, and I'll say this, you have to be the Nadine Milford. Mm-hmm. And you have to beat that drum until somebody just becomes overwhelmed with your passion. And simple laws that we tried to get passed, we were never able to get passed. And then Nadine Milford became the voice of MAD. And we were able to stop the package window sales. We were able to do a lot to change our DWI repeat offender laws. Are we where we should be on DWI? No. But You have to become a voice that has to be reckoned with.
And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, I wish I didn't have a full-time job and could go analyze, and maybe the news and reporters can look into that as far as how many laws have tried to be passed, and where is it hitting that wall? Is it in the House? Is it in the Senate? Is it the same representatives that keep killing those harsher laws? I really think as a state and a community that would be very good information for the voters to see. I mean, it needs to be seen. You know, people are trying to make changes. People are trying to create tougher laws, but they keep getting killed. Why? Who's killing them? Is it the same people over and over? Are we voting for those people? Have we been voting for those people? How do we get that stopped? How do we make a change? Like, enough is enough. Are they going to listen to us?
I have a question about these gangs. I don't know if this is a gang or a known gang. Maybe you could tell me. OTF, what the hell does that mean?
I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay.
OTF?
Yeah, I don't know. In all these videos, and this goes back to Carla's case, all these videos are OTF gang. Who the hell is OTF and what the hell is going on? Because all these kids on their Facebook page holding up these huge guns, and I don't even know where they get them from. It looks like they're part of the cartel. OTF. What the hell is OTF?
When do you guys meet again?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
I'll send you guys a text.
You know, something was brought up in one of our meetings, and unfortunately we ran out of time, but I didn't get to throw out my statistics to one of the representatives, and maybe he'll come back. But you know, he kept talking about how the U.S. is at the top for incarcerating people. And unfortunately, it's a sad statistic that we do have so many people in the prison systems. And I wanted to express to him that he's comparing us to countries where you're convicted of murder, they execute you. You're convicted of child rape, they execute you. They don't have the problems we have because their laws are strong enough and scary enough to say, you know, whether you know, to really make you think about pulling that trigger. You know, I had a conversation about it today, how some of the countries I visited, you know, we've been briefed on when you go out into country, especially in the attire that I had to wear. And I was made to understand that, God forbid, I pull the trigger, acting stupid, and take the life of someone else, of an innocent person, someone just farming their field. I'm screwed. You know, there's no way the U.S. government would come and tout me. They'd be like, no, you're their property now. They'll do whatever they want with you. You know, and I know that in this country, a lot of people feel that we're entitled to the way of life that we have. In reality, I don't think we are. We have to work for our way of life. The kids nowadays, they don't understand that. It's gimme, gimme, gimme. They don't understand that you still gotta work your butt off to buy them that phone, that tablet, socks and underwear that they're gonna wear. And a lot of parents are very quick to just throw money at the problem. And I'm seeing that in, you know, like I said, we have met with some legislators, some representatives and senators. And they work their butts off. I hear it, you know, and I see it some of them have come to talk to us, and I'm like, okay, it's just some other guy who, you know, got lucky or whatever. And I read into their background, and they started from nothing, and they're really trying to make a difference. So, as to go back to what you were trying to ask us, you know, I feel that if our laws were tougher, if our sentencing were harsher, I wish I could change the prison system, because I have some good ideas for that. You know, I think if a kid grows up knowing that, hey, you know what, my dad killed the neighbor, they executed him. They put him in some prison, I don't even know where, I have no contact with him. It'll make that kid think twice about doing the same thing. It's not a fix, because I believe kids need their parents. You know, and I believe people can change. I changed my life for my kids. You know, I hung up my military uniform. You know, I've said this before, I mean, my wife's not allowed to put anything up of what I used to do. My daughter had found my dog tags. I tried to explain to her it was just an ID card. You know, I wish our laws were tougher to protect our kids, to protect our community, to make your job a lot easier. You know, I mean, I know you don't want to go out every day and, oh, it's another murder scene. Oh, another damn murder scene. Another drunk driver. You don't want to do that. You know, unfortunately, life's going to happen. Accidents will happen. But it's not an accident to pull out a gun and shoot it. I'm very well aware of what, you know, putting a gun in someone's hand and expecting them to understand how to release the safety. Cock that gun. Those are actions that you have to think about. Even when you have only split seconds to think about, is it going to be me or that person? And this is me relating to what I used to do in war. It's a different scenario. But there's still that thought that you have to release that safety. You still have to cock that gun. And I think if a lot of these laws were passed, it would be a starting point. Because unfortunately, I know a lot of us aren't going to rest, even if 4 or 6 of these laws make it. We're not going to rest. I mean, our kids are never going to come back. You know, your friends never going to come back. You know, all the officers that go out to protect us and are mistreated or treated bad because some little punk thinks that they should be out at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, fooling around with a gun they took from their mom or dad's nightstand. I just, part of answering your question, I think if our laws were tougher, people would think more about what they're about to do.
I agree with that also, and then like you were saying, Nicole, about the district attorney's office and starting their probation and parole also, you know, and offering these people, deciding whether or not they should be put on the ankle bracelet, and the drug treatment programs and the mental programs, you know, all of that. There's just not enough people to make those determinations or the qualifications, the right qualifications to do it. You know, that's one of our big problems too. My daughter raised my grandson's mother. She was on the streets, and she was 42 years old. She was killed in July by a hit-and-run driver. Ray's mother. So, you know, we've been bombarded with two. But I think if Ray's life would have been better and had a lot of things offered to him way back then, you know, he has siblings also. Two of them had their father, the two older ones didn't. And made choices. The friends that he hung out with were just not the friends he should have been with. He knew that he was a good kid, but he made the wrong decision that night to go with his friend. That's, you know, I hit it to break down earlier, but, you know, I'm here for my daughter, because she would have been.
Even though he made a wrong decision, doesn't give anybody the right to pull out a gun and shoot him.
Yeah, and even if it was meant for the other person, but
that individual made a choice. Yeah,
they had a choice.
Made a choice to pull out a gun and shoot. You know, and these aren't just people that are getting into a little bit of trouble. These are individuals that have continued to get into trouble, continue to make that decision, continue to pull out their gun and scare people, or, you know, do the machismo crap, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. You know, and that's, and, you know, that needs to stop. We need to stop them already.
We need to expect a higher standard from ourselves and from our students, from the teachers, from our lawmakers, from everybody. There's not enough teachers. There's not enough police. You know, they're always griping about how the students aren't doing well. Well, you know what? Send us some teachers' aides. Send some more teachers. There's plenty of teachers out there, I'm sure, would want a job if conditions were better. You know, but the systems are stifling us. And I think that one of our jobs is to expect a higher standard and not back down from it like we're doing.
Well, it's getting close to 8 o'clock. Are we going to go ahead and we're going to meet again on the 5th? Same time, same place?
Yes, and Chief Eden's gonna bring the whatever OTF means.
I already got it.
You already got it?
Yeah.
Okay. What does it mean?
Only the family, and it's originated out of the Black Disciples out of Chicago.
So it's a gang.
It is a street gang, but it's not known to be here.
Well,
Maybe
it is known to be here.
I think, again,
maybe they're just using this saying as their own little gang.
Yeah, they probably stole it because they can't come up with their own.
What I'm saying is...
Because they're stupid, and they're not even black. So...
You remember the Bloods and the Crips way back when everybody wanted to, you know, be one of those guys, right?
So that's what I say, you have to be really careful, because there are kids that will post stuff because it's trending,
right?
Rather than actually part of an organization.
Okay, so when they released, Albuquerque Police released Isaiah's thing right after Carla passed away, and they said he's a known gang member. Can you tell me what gang that is?
If you'll call my gang unit, they can tell you.
Okay. Okay.
So he brought that. I'll bring the information on the community policing project. I'll just look and see what contact information,
Do you
phone
want to
number.
be the lead on that?
Yeah.
So that we can look at how we can support and how we...
Yeah, I'll do that. And then if you want, if someone wants to talk to, maybe ask Paul first, but ask about the mandatory minimum.
I'll talk to
Bill? Nate?
You want to talk to him more?
Okay. Nate will do that. Yep, please figure that. Was there anything else?
I do want to ask Nate, so do you feel good about number 6, the bail eligibility?
I do. So, you know, I appreciate Nicole's statements about, you know, these being nonpartisan or bipartisan, and I don't care who gets the credit as long as we get them done. And so just to go through them real quickly, on the curfew bill, I worked really hard to get a Democratic co-sponsor on that bill. Carl Trujillo is my co-sponsor, and I also worked with Mo Maestas, who signed on that bill. So there's a lot of Democrat support there. Did you pre-file? We pre-filed that. That's been filed. So
do you guys know what that means?
It's been introduced. The second one, penalty enhancement for intentional child abuse, I think that passed the House with 10 no votes out of, it's a 70-member chamber. So that certainly has bipartisan support. It died in the Senate, as many of these do. The criminal offender database, that's just an issue of coming up with funding. So I already got a commitment from our appropriations chairman that that's going to be in the budget. So we just have to pay for it, and we run it through the chief's old agency, the Department of Public Safety, so they would administer that money to make sure we have that going. 3 strikes enhancement, Paul Pacheco's already pre-filed that, that's been introduced. Access to violent criminal juvenile histories, I am carrying that, that's been pre-filed. And number 6, to get to your question, Peter Worth, who's a Democratic senator, has already filed that, and that has bipartisan support. So I feel very positive about half of these, but you know the problem always remains getting out of the Senate.
Is the Senate, yeah, that's the committee here. The Judicial Committee and the Public Affairs Committee is where they go through first, and that's where they call them the so-called kill committees to either vote it out or pass it along. So that's what we have to really wait for.
On the back of our little pamphlet here that we made, there's some senators and representatives on here. I know for a fact we've been calling, trying to get a hold of some of these people, trying to have them, you know, come join us, come explain to us what's going on, why they would oppose these bills. I'm sure if they watch the news, read the newspapers or whatever, they would probably deny that we've been trying to call them, but we keep records of all that.
That's smart.
You know, it's pathetic that I know for a fact that 2 of the names on here at the top of the list failed to get a hold of us. And, you know, I guess they have something to gain from all this. Is the way I'm looking at it, is, you know, so, I don't know.
All we can do is keep calling, keep emailing, letting people know, to let their representatives know again that enough is enough, they're in favor for these bills and any tougher laws, and it's up to them to see where they're going to vote.
I get less response than Alan does.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
She probably couldn't call because
Can his wife call?
I don't know. I mean, it's...
Who's that, me? I hope you're his only wife.
I think 7+ years.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody can as a community member and as a voter, email, call, anybody.
I've called once already, all of them.
You know, like for example, if you call the guy on the top of the page there.
Michael Sanchez?
Yeah. Have him answer his own question of why crime is up 900% in his jurisdiction. You know, it's 900%. I mean, what kind of distinction is that? You know, and that's ridiculous.
I mean, like I said,
Albuquerque's up 200%. We're a much bigger town. We're a much bigger city. Belen, Las Lunas. I'm like, are you kidding me? You got that much crime going out there and you can't get these people? So, I mean, if he's helping them stay out of jail, I mean, he's making out. You know, I mean.
There's other people there, but then also get on the state's website, you can search by your address who your representatives.
and definitely email them.
Yeah, I have them, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So next Tuesday, same time?
See you there?
Yes.
Same time, same place?
Sorry.
Are we going to have more donuts?
It's someone else's turn next week.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you guys so much.
I'm with you guys.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you. See you next Tuesday. Please keep coming out.
And I was just telling her, they didn't play. What did you say?
Yeah, yeah, this is. I was gonna reach out to them. That's how I was they want legislation that we have ready to have, and then I guess they want to work.
You can afford.
It's our pleasure. Try to get somebody here next Tuesday on the community council. How you doing, man?
Tells me his parents I'm sure his sister's not sure.
Are you guys out of school now?